forensic genealogy, the process of identifying unknown offenders through their DNA by finding genetic relatives and building out family trees. It's taken the crime-solving world by storm. How does it work, and what are these cases all about? Find out on Season 4 of DNA ID, the only podcast that exclusively covers the revolutionary technique that is forensic genealogy. This season, you'll hear more than 20 solved cases like Pamela Kahanis, Rachel Johnson, and Krista Martin. And of course, we'll continue with our coverage of doe identifications that we began in Season 3. Don't miss the Season 4 premiere of DNA ID on Monday, January 29th, wherever you get your podcasts.
You're listening to The Murder in My Family, brought to you by AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to check out some of the other great true crime podcasts from this network, including Missing Persons,
DNA ID,
Scene of the Crime,
Zodiac Speaking,
Beyond Bizarre True Crime,
Citizen Detective, and
Campus Killings.
all of these podcasts are available for you to binge on right now, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe where you're listening to this podcast so you don't miss an episode.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this podcast do not necessarily represent those of the podcast, its host, or sponsors. If you would like to discuss the murder in your family on this podcast, please be sure to visit themurderinmyfamily.com for more information. This episode may contain unsettling material or subject matter. Listener discretion is advised.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of The Murder in My Family. I'm your host, Mike Morford. In this episode, we'll be discussing the tragic and violent deaths of a husband and wife, as well as that of their unborn child, at the hands of a family member. The triple murder had far-reaching implications, as we'll get into in this episode. We'll dive into this case after some quick housekeeping. Independent podcasts like this one depend on word of mouth to bring in new listeners. So if you find that you enjoy this show, please take a moment to rate and review it wherever you listen to your podcast. And be sure to introduce a friend to the show and invite them to listen. With your help, The Murder in My Family can continue to grow and reach a new audience. To learn more about the show or the cases we discuss, please visit themurderinmyfamily.com. You can also find us on Twitter with the handle @MurderMyFam or on Facebook at facebook.com/TMIMF podcast. If you'd like to support The Murder in My Family and get VIP access to things like ad-free listening, early preview episodes, and bonus content of not only this show, but for every other podcast on the AbJack network of indie podcasts, consider subscribing to the show with an AbJack Insider subscription through Apple Podcast. For only $4.99 a month or $49.99 a year, you'll unlock a variety of listener benefits, and you'll be supporting the show in the process. Your support is greatly appreciated. And thank you to all of the supporters that generously donate to help keep the show growing and improving. One last note. Please support any of the sponsors that you hear on The Murder in My Family, the way that those sponsors support the show. It's with our sponsor support that this show can go on and continue to provide a platform to share these stories with you in every episode. Thank you. And now on with the show. The following statement was provided by my guest in this episode, Jasmine King. My sister Jessica Hanson was not only my younger sister, but she was my best friend. We did everything together. I hold in my heart memories of her in grade school, when we went to North Rockland High School together, and when we both attended Russell Sage College in Albany, New York. Jessica was a free spirit and loved to live life with no fear. She had an interest in learning French and planned to one day visit Paris. She played the violin in middle school and was part of school plays and volunteered her spare time in church. It was Jessica's dream to fall in love, get married, and raise children of her own. But her life was stolen on the morning of December 13, 2021. She was 9 months pregnant with her unborn daughter, Annika. She left behind her now 5-year-old son, Ty, mother Helene Garcia, father Emmanuel Hernandez, older brother Jamie Hernandez, and older sister Jasmine King. You can hear from Jasmine's own words that she misses her sister deeply, and the wounds from this senseless, tragic, and perhaps avoidable triple murder run deep. On that fateful day over the holidays in December, Jasmine lost not only her beloved sister, but also her niece that Jessica was 9 months pregnant with, and her brother-in-law. And as we'll get into shortly, although her nephew lived through this nightmare, Jasmine lost him as well. Unlike so many of the cases I cover on this show, this has been solved. The killer was identified and even arrested, and it turns out that the perp was someone close to home, someone the victim should have been able to trust. Instead, they wound up dead at his hands. This case involves domestic violence, and it's perhaps a bit unusual that the violence isn't between spouses or intimate partners, but the perp responsible for the violence in this case is a sibling. At around 9:45 a.m. on December 15, 2021, Clyde and Jessica Hanson were supposed to receive a food basket from the Interlakes Community Action Partnership, a nonprofit that assists low-income families. When the employee from the partnership arrived at the Hansons' apartment in Milbank, South Dakota, they noticed blood on the door and called the Milbank Police Department. Officers came to the home to perform a welfare check and discovered a crime scene. In an unfinished portion of the home, officers lifted a blue tarp partially obscured by stacks of drywall and discovered the bodies of Clyde and Jessica Hanson. Clyde had been brutally bludgeoned to death with a baseball bat, and Jessica had been attacked with a machete. Jessica was 9 months pregnant with a baby girl she planned to name Annika. Sadly, the baby didn't survive the attack either. Earlier that same morning, Brent Hanson, Clyde's brother and Jessica's brother-in-law, walked into the police station in Milbank. He was supposed to meet with Chief Boyd Van Voren and receive a Christmas card from him on behalf of his church. He hadn't left yet when the call for a welfare check at Clyde and Jessica's home, where Brent lived in the basement, was placed. Chief Van Voren asked Brent how everything was going with Clyde and Jessica, who Brent had recently been charged with assaulting. This was the real reason that the chief had asked Brent to come into the station. At first, Brent lied and said they had moved out of the house. Knowing there was blood found at the house, but not yet knowing that Clyde and Jessica were dead, the chief asked Brent where they had moved to, and he also asked Brent what was the red stuff on the door. With that, Brent couldn't keep it in any longer, and blurted out to the chief, "I snapped." He immediately admitted that he had killed Clyde on the night of December 12th while Jessica was at work. Brent beat his brother to death with a baseball bat while he lay asleep in bed, with Clyde's son Ty asleep nearby. When Jessica arrived home the following morning, she was attacked with a machete as soon as she walked into the apartment. The chief was shocked to hear the killer in front of him spilling the details of the horrific triple murder he had committed. Brent assured Chief Van Buren that his 2.5-year-old nephew was safe and being well cared for. But officers performing the welfare check found the toddler asleep at home, by himself, and covered in his parents' blood. The little boy was alive and physically unharmed, but who knows what he may have witnessed and how it may affect him for the rest of his life. Brent Hanson was arrested with a bond set at $5 million. He was charged with 3 counts each of both first and second-degree murder. In another state, and powerless to help in any way, Jasmine received the tragic news that her sister, brother-in-law, and niece were dead, and that Ty was all alone, and it was news she'd have to break to her family. As far as Brent Hanson, it was up to a jury to decide which kind of murder he was guilty of, since he had confessed to all the killings. In September 2022, Hanson pled guilty to 3 counts of first-degree murder. In exchange, his life was spared. There would be no death penalty, rather life in prison. To say that Jessica's family was blindsided and upset by the decision would be an understatement. They released a statement that read, "We are heartbroken with the state attorney's brash decision to enter into this plea agreement without the knowledge nor approval of the family. The prosecution allowed him to make a deal and avoid any possibility of the death penalty for his plea. We are displeased with the work of the state attorney, as we had clearly stated to him we wanted a trial for Jessica, Clyde, and Annika Hanson, and made it clear to him that we were seeking justice in the form of the death penalty. In our eyes, the state attorney sided with the defendant by giving him his life back, while our family continues to grieve over the stolen lives of our loved ones, with no peace in sight." Instead of feeling relief that the monster who killed 3 people was behind bars and justice was served, the family was feeling frustrated and betrayed. And what's even more tragic is that perhaps these murders could have been and should have been prevented had there been protective orders in place, or if Brent had been in custody for assaulting both Jessica and Clyde. In July, Jessica returned from an inpatient psychiatric facility where she received treatment for depression, expecting to see her beloved dog. Her brother-in-law Brent had agreed to care for it while Jessica got the help she needed. But when she got home, the dog wasn't there, and Brent wouldn't tell her where it was at or what happened to it. When she threatened to call police over the matter, Brent attacked her. She was 4 months pregnant at the time. He shoved her, threatening to throw her out of the second story of the home, and he began to hit her in the head. He also pushed his brother Clyde, who jumped in front of his pregnant and vulnerable wife to protect her. After this, they were both too afraid to return to the home they shared with Brent. However, Clyde and Brent were co-owners of the home, complicating things. So they subdivided it, essentially. But despite the problems between them, they had to live next to each other. Adding to the injustice, the Hanson's son Ty is not with any of the remaining members of his family. Jessica's sister, Jasmine, wanted to adopt her almost 3-year-old nephew, who was in the care of South Dakota CPS after losing both of his parents, but she wasn't allowed to. Instead, custody was granted to an adopted family, and until he's 18, which is 13 years from now, he likely will not be able to have any contact with his Aunt Jasmine. The move was a gut punch for Jasmine, and when she inquired about even sending her nephew Christmas presents, she was told that the family would not be giving Ty any of the gifts she sent. Now Jasmine is without any part of her sister's family. Jasmine wanted to share her story, the story of not only losing Jessica and Clyde, but also Annika, who she never got a chance to meet. And she also felt it was important to remember that she lost her nephew Ty that day too. I sat down to discuss this heartbreaking and terrible case with Jasmine, and the toll it's taken on her and her family. That discussion is coming up in just a moment. And now would be a good time to point out, if you or someone you know needs help with a domestic violence-related situation, help is available. You can call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 800-799-7233. Hi, Jasmine. I want to thank you for coming on the show to talk today about the murders of not only your sister, Jessica, but that of her unborn baby and her husband, Clyde.
Oh, thank you for having me here. I appreciate you taking your time.
Yeah, and I thank you for being here to discuss this awful story. As we're going to get into, it's very tragic. I'm sure this has devastated your family. Before we get into exactly what happened and why and who is responsible, can you start out just telling listeners a little bit about your sister and some of your memories of her?
Jessica was a free spirit. She was the kind of person that wanted to learn from her own experience. She didn't like getting advice from people. She kind of wanted to experience things her own way. Very adventurous. When we graduated high school, one of my favorite memories was that she got on a plane and lived in Puerto Rico for 6 months. That's the kind of person she was. She was a daredevil. She just went for something. You know, if she wanted something, she would go for it. So that inspires me now today to be like that.
Was she older? Your older sister?
She's my younger sister.
Okay.
She's the baby of the family.
Okay. And did you have a very close relationship like a lot of sisters do?
Yeah. We were like Irish twins. We were only 13 months apart. But she was always a grade younger than me. So I would always experience things first and then try to give her my advice. And she didn't really want to listen. She'd always want to experience things, in her own way.
And, obviously, as you're getting older, she's starting a family, she meets Clyde, they get married. How long were they together for, and what were your thoughts of Clyde?
So she did meet him online. It was an online dating site, which I had done the same thing. I had met my ex-husband now through online dating, and I had suggested that to her. The only issue was of the age difference. We found that a little alarming. There was about a 31 year age difference between her and Clyde. So the family wasn't really happy about that. I wasn't either. But then she decided to move to South Dakota. We were born and raised in New York, so it's definitely a different demographic there. We're also Puerto Rican, and that demographic is mostly white. So we were fearful, and were right, that she was going to encounter a lot of racism, which she unfortunately did in South Dakota.
Yeah, so a little bit of a shock going to a whole nother, New York is probably as far different as you can get from there. So, obviously she's taking this big chance. She's with somebody that your family is a little bit alarmed of his age, and now she's going to this other spot. As far as the relationship, how long were they together overall, and did you guys come around on their relationship?
Yeah, so I can't really recall how long they dated. They got married pretty quickly. So they got married in September of 2016. I think she met him in the summer of 2015. And then they eloped in September of 2016, and then they were married for 6 years before they both were killed.
And did that during that time, did her relationship seem like it was going pretty good with him? And
yeah, she was happy. We accepted him into our family. We didn't get to see much of Jessica and Clyde because they lived in South Dakota. I did go to South Dakota once only, just to throw her a baby shower for her son. Okay. So that was the only time I went to visit her there. But then she moved to New York for a little while, to give birth to her son in New York. And the family got to spend a little bit more time with her son, a little bit more time with her before then she went back to South Dakota. So it was back and forth.
Having the son come into her life, was that something she was really excited about? Was that a big life-changing event for her?
Yeah, she was very happy to be a mom.
What did she find that, a lot of times I'm trying to picture with my kids, and you have a support system, you have lots of family around that can help you sometimes, and being that your families were sort of in opposite states, did she struggle at all with having people to help her, getting a break Absolutely. When she needed it, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, and she would text me that a lot, like, I wish you guys were here, I wish you guys were closer. And then she would mention how some of the neighbors would harass her about her ethnicity. They would mail her packages of taco sauce. There was a lot of microaggressions with her neighborhood in Milbank, South Dakota. She would report a lot of these, microaggressions to the police department in Milbank. They didn't do anything about it. We didn't really know who was doing it, which neighbors were doing it. That's still the mystery. They never looked into that. But she would text me a lot and message me on Facebook that she wishes that I was there, that I could babysit. And the conversations were always, well, why don't you just come back home, be closer to the family in New York, where you'll have that family support, as opposed to asking us to move there.
And was she a full-time mom, or was she working too?
She was working full-time. She worked the night shift. So she would work the graveyard shift from 11 o'clock at night to 7 in the morning. And then Clyde would work during the day while she was with her son. She'd sleep. There was like that kind of transition where she can sleep a little bit, but she mostly worked the night shift, and Clyde would work the day shift, and they kind of just alternated with watching my nephew.
Okay. And then they would sort of balance out, like both of them getting a little bit of rest and working and all that stuff. So, and so she was excited for the baby to come along. Then she's, doing well with it, other than the fact she doesn't have family there from your part of the family. How long before this all happened? Her son was what, 3 years old at the time this happened? 2 years. Okay. Yeah. So she had been there 2 years, living there when this happened. Towards the end, was there anything she was saying that was worrisome, or anything that she was frightened about?
It was more of her husband Clyde. They were getting into some, I guess, financial issues. I don't really know the logistics of it. They owned a house in Milbank. It was a beautiful 3-bedroom home. But Clyde decided to sell it. He made the decision, let's sell this house so we can save more money and move back into the apartment where they were murdered. Now, this is a storefront building on Main Street in Milbank that he owned with the murderer, Brent Hanson, which was his brother, Jessica's brother-in-law. So they decided to move back into that place, which was, I think, a 2-bedroom apartment. And that's kind of where the trouble was starting, because Brent didn't want her back there. for whatever reason, he didn't want, you know, to share that apartment with them.
So when they moved back, it seems like there's maybe some bad feelings between him and towards your sister.
Yes. There was a lot of, I guess, favors. Can you babysit my dog? Can you watch my nephew? Things like that. There was an issue. She had gone to the hospital in April for about a week or something, and she had asked Brent to babysit her dog for the week. And when she came back, the dog was gone. He had given the dog away. And that started a whole argument. That was the first time he laid his hands on her, Brent. He beat her up. He had punched her head into the floor because she had threatened to call the police, saying, well, if you don't tell me where my dog is, I'm going to call the police. And he's like, well, I'm going to get you out of here. You're gonna see me get you out of this apartment. He attacked her. He started beating her up. My nephew was screaming, trying to run up to him. And then Clyde had tried to get him off and eventually did. But that was the first time he had beat her up. Then they had moved out of the apartment temporarily. They stayed with some friends from their religion to kind of cool things down. She had called the police. They made a report. They didn't arrest him right away. They would knock on the door. He wouldn't open the door in the apartment. About a month or two, I guess like in August, they decided to come back into the apartment to try to live there again. He tried to throw her down the stairs. He had just opened the door one day and then tried to throw her down the stairs. She was on the phone with my brother at the time. And either my brother or Jessica had called 911, and then that's when he finally got arrested for the April incident. So he was arrested in August of 2021 for beating her up in April.
These are real signs of a real volatile situation.
Yeah. And
you hear often about partners, spouses maybe hitting each other and it becoming violent, but it seems like it's not as frequent that it's like another member of the family that's involved in that. Did that cause any kind of bad blood between Brent and Clyde? Did they sort of become at odds with each other over that?
Yeah, I think the last time I talked to Clyde, I was pretty upset in April and I was screaming. I remember yelling at Clyde, how dare you not take care of my sister? I'm going to take her from this, from your living situation. I remember Clyde saying, this hurts me too. This is my brother. I love him very much. He feels really bad about what he did, but he won't apologize. I remember him saying he's not going to apologize. Even though he knows what he did was wrong, he doesn't feel that sorry. It's essentially, he felt that she deserved that for whatever reason.
So, by this point, there's bad friction starting between them. The police have become involved in this one incident. So it wasn't going to a good place, but they wound up all back together. Is that correct?
Yeah. So she had stayed. They were saying they were going to get their own place. They were going to get their own house. I, at that point, was on getting my house in California with my ex-husband. I had even offered her to live in my apartment. We had family in New York that said, you can come live with us as well. But she was about almost 9 months in December getting ready for the baby. And the conversation was, okay, when I have the baby, we can talk about me moving, either to California or to New York. Sorry.
Was she, and when she said moving with the baby, was she thinking Clyde coming too, or was there a relationship? Okay.
Well, that was kind of the, sorry.
Take your time.
Sorry. There's like a lot of guilt.
And again, feel free to take your time, compose yourself, whatever you want to do, and when you're ready, just continue.
I didn't think I was gonna cry. M- my family and I had said to her that the invitation would only be for her and her son, not for Clyde. So she said she wasn't going to leave her husband. And I guess that still kind of stays with me because I should have also allowed Clyde to come live with us, but because of his age, I didn't feel it was right for me to be financially supporting him. So, yeah.
So she did wind up staying, and then she's got this volatile situation going on, but then she finds out she's pregnant.
Yes, and that was in April.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so how were things during the pregnancy? Did they get any better? Was there any sign that things were calming down?
Well, I know she was struggling with postpartum. The pregnancy, we were worried when he had attacked her that she was going to lose the baby. Same thing in August when he tried to throw her down the stairs. But she was very, going through the emotions. She's still fairly new mom with Ty, 2 years old. And then she has this baby, the stress of the finances. So I think she was very sad at that time. Just, emotionally. She came to New York to visit my dad and my mom and my brother, and they celebrated their anniversary because it was in September. So they were able to do that. And I think also they did like a little mini baby shower for the girl, Annika. Her who was going to be her daughter, that they wanted to name her that. But yeah, she just seemed very sad, I think, at this point in her life.
And obviously postpartum depression can be a big thing, and she's got this ordeal, if it's financial on top of this relationship with the brother-in-law. It seems like there's a lot of stuff going on, but when it should have been a happy time just before the holidays and the baby on the way that was probably due any time, this happened. Take us back, if you can, to that day in December 2021. What was it, the 15th of December?
Well, that's what we found out.
Okay.
She was killed on the 13th.
Okay.
And supposedly Clyde was killed on the 12th, but they said it was midnight. So technically it was still December 13th, but I'll leave that to the police. They didn't really mark the date wrong. Right?
Now, I know this, what happened was, from what I've read, at least in one of the reports, that he walked into the police station and confessed to what he had done. But can you tell us, as you understand it, exactly what happened, from when he had first attacked his brother and why to how he wound up attacking your sister?
So they never really figured out why. There's theories going on from his side of the family. So I won't be able, and I don't really care why he did it, but from what I've learned and from the things that were shared, so Jessica and Clyde had, the last time people saw her, they were at a baby shower. It wasn't their baby shower, it was a baby shower from their friends from the religion they had gone to on Saturday night. That was the last time anyone heard from them. I heard from her on Wednesday. She had called me about, me taking care of her dog. Eventually the dog she found her dog, the one that was given away. And she was kind of needing some support when the baby was born, that who's going to take care of the dog. And I had agreed, I'll take care of the dog. Then they had the baby shower on Saturday. That's the last time anyone saw her. I think she went to work on Sunday. She worked the night shift. So she worked that Sunday night, which would have been December 12th, into Monday morning. So Clyde was alone with Ty. I know that, I do remember on that Wednesday I talked to her that she had told me that Clyde keeps leaving the door unlocked. Again, this is my theory because I wasn't there. The police hadn't confirmed, but I do remember she had an argument with Clyde about him leaving the door unlocked and that Brent can come into the apartment. if he keeps leaving the door unlocked. So my suspicion is that maybe the door was unlocked that night. I don't know, it's speculation. But somehow Brent got into the apartment after Jessica went to work for the night shift. Clyde was already sleeping with Ty. Ty was in his own room, and Clyde had his own bed. And then he came into the apartment and had a baseball bat and hit him 18 times. He hit him in the head and in the ribs. He had broken ribs. He had a contusion, and he was struck 18 times with a baseball bat in front of Ty. And I only know this because Ty had told me. My nephew.
That's terrible. Do you know if he was awake when this happened? Did he confront him and they had an argument, or was this while he was sleeping?
My assumption was he was sleeping.
So just a real cold-blooded and brutal attack.
Yeah.
And just so I understand, he's at this point, he's not welcome in the apartment. He was not supposed to be in there.
Yeah, it was two separate apartments. He had actually built that apartment for them when he decided to sell the home and then moved back into the apartment. They bought the materials. I think they did it together. They put a kitchen, a stove, they put 2 bedrooms, they set it up. So I don't know if he broke in. I don't know if the door was unlocked or how he did it, how he got in, but.
And then, I assume he waited at this point for your sister to come home.
Yeah, I don't know if he left Ty. I'm assuming he left Ty alone because CPS had reported that he hadn't eaten or drinking in 2 days. He was still in his dirty diaper. So my guess is he hadn't attended to Ty at all. So I don't know if he waited because he knew Jessica's routine. I know that Jessica would wait for Clyde to come downstairs so that they can walk together back into the apartment, so she's not walking alone, and confronting Brent. So that morning, again, I don't know. She probably finished her shift 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm not really sure. She was coming back from work. And she made it right to the door. I don't even think she made it all the way into her apartment, and he had stabbed her 130 times with the machete.
Although I can't even fathom when you guys get this news. Yeah. You said it was the 15th when you were told about it.
Yeah, it was on a Wednesday. Yeah.
How do you process that news and deal with it? It's got to be just shocking and not unbelievable.
Yeah. It was a prayer for one. I do know that that helped a little at that time. I wouldn't be able to say it anymore. I don't think I believe in God anymore, but at that time I feel like believing in a higher power kind of helped me through that, helped me accept what I was hearing. I was actually driving on a highway in the rain when I was told. So you can imagine how freaked out I was. I thought I was actually dreaming. It was just, and everything was like kind of in slow motion as I was hearing the details. And then it was, how the hell am I going to tell my parents? How am I going to tell my brother? Like trying to wake up from this nightmare, and I wasn't waking up.
So this is during the holidays. It's supposed to be a happy time of year, and here you are dealing with this awful news. And if there's anything positive or that was good that came out, was that Ty, was relatively unharmed. Besides, you said he hadn't eaten or drinking, but physically he hadn't been harmed because it would have been that much worse.
Yeah.
So he was quickly, it wasn't a mystery who did this. He had basically owned up to it right away. And what was his attitude? Do you know? Was he like bragging about it? Was he sorry that he had done it? What do you think he was thinking when he went in there saying that happened?
Yeah, so I know he was summoned over. He was summoned over to get a Christmas card. And that's when I think his name was Chief Officer Van Buren had asked him, what's the situation with Jessica? Because there was an order of protection against him. Have you been, has everything been doing okay? And he said, well, they don't live here anymore. He like, well, what do you mean they don't live here? Where do they live? And as the interview's going on, he gets a call to do a welfare check at that same apartment because they had received, I guess someone had delivered from a Lutheran church a gift basket of fruit, and the delivery man saw blood on the door. So he called the police to do a welfare check as Brent is being interviewed at the police station. And Brent confessed right there. He killed him. He said, I killed them. I snapped. And I killed him.
Mm. I'm trying to think how you move forward with this, because again, it's not a mystery to this. It's not, wondering when you're going to find out who did this and all that stuff. You knew right away what happened. And I would think that you're looking forward to getting justice and seeing this guy get what he deserves, prison, whatever it was. That penalty's on the table, I think, in that state as well. What was your family hoping for? What were you thinking was the appropriate punishment, or what you wanted to see?
Well, there was two things. We were dealing with CPS, so they're another thief in this story. But we were more focused on the safety of my nephew Ty, trying to get custody of him. He was facing the death penalty, which is what we were in favor of. The state did not care really to hear our plea for justice. And they decided to not go through with the trial. They shared some graphic details. I mean, this information wasn't even released to the public, that, Ty had witnessed it. Ty was covered, in the blood of his mother. All this information was very hard to absorb. I think only a few people know this. Not even my own parents know this. The details of how many times they were hit. So it felt that I felt, especially because I used to have a passion for law, I wanted a trial for my sister. I wanted at least for the state to represent her and for there to be true justice. And the fact that he didn't want to die made it that much more, no, you need to receive the death penalty. You don't deserve to live. But we didn't get that. She didn't get a day in trial. She got a plea deal, which to me is like a traffic ticket. It's kind of like a get out of jail free, just enjoy jail, enjoy your life kind of thing. That's how I saw it. They didn't really do much effort in trying to, I don't know, get real justice for her.
Yeah, it's a lot of times it seems like in these kind of cases, they'll consult the family and say, hey, how would you like to do this? We can go to trial, but some families don't want to do that because it's like opening up all those old wounds and they have to live through it again. And they're just happy to see that person prosecuted. But it sounds like you really didn't even get a say in this. Did they say why they didn't really consult you or give you any kind of voice in this?
Oh, well, we chewed out the district attorney. But he kept on saying that the police had interviewed him and he had confessed, I think, before the Miranda rights were read. I don't really know, if something like that. So they felt like the case could have gotten thrown out. He could have walked away free. I don't think that would have been true. They wanted, and I think they just did not want to do the whole jury trial and release that information and maybe they didn't want to have people traumatized by seeing the photos. I try to look into their perspective as well, but at the same time, I have to live with it each day, each night. I have to, I have trouble sleeping every night, having to know that my sister's not here and the details that happened to her.
Yeah, it's just very, I mean, I guess you could see from a legal standpoint, if, say he did indeed snap, and at the same time, he killed both your sister and your brother-in-law, maybe he could say it was a spur of the moment thing. I snapped and not be eligible for the death penalty, but he waited and waited and waited for your sister to come home.
Yep.
After he had done that, he could have turned himself in before she came home.
Exactly.
And he didn't. He waited and waited, and that seems as premeditated as you can get, to sit there waiting for her to come home and then
Exactly.
do this. And it just seems like one of those cases where it's a clear cut of premeditated murder.
Mhm.
Um,
And he
and
admitted that in the plea deal. He admitted to premeditated. And it was 3 counts. They also included Annika as a life. So even though she wasn't born, at least they did that.
Mhm. It's just that doesn't seem like a fair outcome. I mean, at the same time, he's not going to get out to hurt anyone else, but it's still, he's still, going
Yeah.
to enjoy whatever life he has. He's going to enjoy, TV and food and meals and seeing his relatives and things like that. And you guys have been robbed of that, and your sister and your brother-in-law were robbed of their chance to see their children grow up and everything else.
And not just that, like it's still like we can't see our nephew anymore either. CPS, as wonderful as they are, they decided to let his foster family adopt him. So they took him from me because the foster family in South Dakota, who's friends with the CPS workers, wanted my nephew. They wanted to adopt him, and they did, because they know the laws there as well. So that's another whole can of worms. They took him from my home.
So he had come to live with you, and they came and forcibly removed him?
No, they had issues with the fact that I was still grieving my sister. They didn't like that I saw a therapist. They illegally obtained, and I'm with a lawyer trying to prove this as well, but they illegally obtained my medical records, that I was in therapy. And they basically were trying to use my disability against me, to say that I was an unfit parent. All because this foster family and this is a foster family who's also adopted 2 other children from the system, 2 other kids that they fostered. So I know them very well. In South Dakota, they wanted him. So the day we were approved, my ex-husband and I were approved to adopt him, they went back to do an interview about my mental health, and whatever was released from that interview, they made the decision that I wasn't going to be the adopted mother. And they took him, they put him on a plane and brought him back to the foster family. And he was adopted. And we're not allowed to see him until he's 18.
And you don't have any recourse, any way to fight this and try and appeal or anything like that?
We tried to appeal. The judge, who was the same judge from Judge Alshire, the same judge from the murder case, she said that because of my sister's poor life decisions, because she did not leave a will, the social workers of CPS did not break any laws, state laws, not federal, but state laws. So therefore, her hands were tied, and she can't do it. There's nothing that she can do. She can't reverse this adoption. And even though everyone in the courtroom agreed that he should be with me, he should be with family, the laws in South Dakota are not written for the family basically to keep the child, or for the child to stay with the family. Basically, if you foster a child for 6 months in South Dakota, you're eligible to adopt them, regardless of blood or kinship.
Yeah, it's like a whole nother tragedy on top of everything else. Because now it's like you've lost your nephew too.
Yeah, it's 2 thieves. We have Brett and we have the foster parents. They're no different than a murderer in my eyes. They're thieves.
Yeah. So, you talked a little bit about, obviously this can have a major impact on you and your health, your mental health, can cause depression and PTSD and all that kind of stuff. And I don't think there's any shame in getting help and talking to people if it can help you. What have you been able to get out of that? Has it helped you? And does it continue to help you?
You mean like seeking mental health support?
Yeah, and whatever therapy, anything that you're doing to try and deal with all this stuff that you've been
I guess
given on your plate?
I'm more traumatized. I used to be an advocate, like, yes, get your mental health. I used to be a school counselor. Now it's like, just keep that stuff quiet because you're going to be judged for it. You're not going to, it's not going to look well on you. It looks like a weakness. Unfortunately, it changed my perspective on it. I am doing things like I'm working on getting my pilot license. And I know there's this thing about right now, if you're flying, you can't have any mental health issues and things like that. I've been finding out I think in this country, seeking mental health support isn't looked at in a good light, especially with my experience of what I've seen. So I think more now I'm more guarded at sharing that I seek support because of what I had to go through and the judgments I've had to face.
It's just a whole other side of things that, there's a ripple effect in these kinds of cases that people are affected, in like every phase of their life, that they're left to sort of try and pick up the pieces after their loved one is murdered and dealing with a whole bunch of things that they never would have had to deal with maybe if this didn't happen. It's just very tragic and far reaching. And now, as you talked about, your nephew not only lost his parents, but now he's not with you either. Mm-hmm. He's lost the real family that he has. It's just not a good outcome any way you look in this case.
Yeah.
How tough has this been on the rest of your family?
Oh, it's been horrible. My family doesn't even talk about Jessica. We just don't talk about her, which is very sad. Like my parents can't. They ask me when I start talking about a memory of her to not talk. I think I only talk to my brother about my sister. It's just too painful for my parents to talk about her or to talk about my nephew. I still mail him Christmas gifts. His birthday's coming up on March 15th. So I've been just kind of, any little thing, even though I know I'm pretty sure because the foster family told my brother that they're not going to be accepting any gifts. But CPS had said that they'll at least keep the gifts until he turns 18. So I think that's a way for me to heal is even though he's not going to, when he sees this and he's 18 years old, he's not going to need this, 5T t-shirt, but at least he knows that I was thinking of him and that I love him. And, I still want to be there, a part of his life. I've just, unfortunately, because of selfishness of some people, it's not going to be able to happen right away. We just have to wait. And
he's how old now? 4 or 5?
He's going to be 5 on March 15th. So it's a countdown. I'm just 13 years to go until I can see it.
Well, it just a very tragic case. And at the end of the day, you're left with, missing, your sister who's very close with you. And now the child she would have had and Ty, just a very, very tough situation. What advice, going through this, because we have listeners that have been through similar experiences, or maybe they're going through one now, or they don't know what to do. And your story might be sort of similar to what they're going through. What advice would you have to somebody that might be in that kind of situation?
Oh, I would definitely tell them to go to a grief support group. There might be one at church. I was blessed to find one that was specialized in homicides because I really got some insight from people that were going through the same thing. Because grief is different in the way you lose your loved one. It's not the same when it's someone dying of cancer, someone dying of suicide, and someone dying of homicide. It's a different kind of pain. And I think the best way to kind of talk about it is to be with someone that actually went through the exact same thing. With homicide, you have to deal with the trials, you have to deal with the police, you have to deal with the media, people reaching out to you to wanting to do documentaries, which just, happened with us. So it's a whole different kind of ball game. And getting support, knowing that you need support and saying that you need it. I think for me, I didn't give myself that time to grieve because I was so focused on getting my nephew. My doctors, because when I came back from the funeral, I was a total mess. My doctors told me, you need to stop your job. You need to go on disability. You need to just focus on you, and I refused to listen, and I regret that now. I wish I had taken that time that I needed, that 6 months off of work, to kind of get myself back to a healthier state, because it's been tough. I didn't eat. I would feel guilty eating. I would feel guilty, enjoying a meal. I had trouble sleeping, and then I had to go to work, and I was, coworkers were becoming upset with me. It was 4 months into the murder, and they were already telling me to get over it. So it's, if you feel like you need to not work, I think that's like the number one thing, is just put that on work. The money will come in, the state will take care of you. Don't be worried about your bills. Everything will get taken care of, but you got to focus on you.
It sounds like some good advice. And again, I know a lot of times people listen to the show, they're going through something similar. So any kind of words like that are valuable to people that are listening. But I want to thank you for coming on and sharing this story and how tragic it is and what you've gone through, and how far reaching all of this is, because it's still going on. And for you, you're never going to get your sister back. And then it could be 13 years before you get your nephew back. So you've still got a long road ahead, and I wish you well in it. And I hope you're able to come through the other side and be strong the entire way.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you once again for joining me for this episode of The Murder of My Family. I'd like to thank Sonny Landon for writing and research assistance in this episode. We'll be back here soon with an all-new episode of The Murder of My Family, and I hope you'll join me for it. But before you go, remember that every murder victim means something to somebody.